This is part 2 of our cauliflower grow along that we're growing over winter, and today we're going to look at taking these seedlings and potting them on into pots that are this size. We're going to continue potting these up into larger pots until we have room in the polytunnel and some of our beds outside in order to plant them. These have a little bit of damage from flea beetles, but they do have enough roots on now to pot them on. They're also a little bit leggy, which is surprising bearing in mind they have been outside and we've not really had any good temperatures. But what we have had is a lot of darker weather, so it may be to do with that. They were germinated in the house and then they were taken outside straight after they were sort of a centimetre tall or so. If you are following along with the kale grow along for also growing over winter, then the process that we're going to use now is exactly the same of potting them up, and then we're going to place them in the same area of the mesh to make sure that we don't have any butterflies landing on them, although there is very few about now, so hopefully that won't be too much of a problem. So this is the compost I'm using today. This is just the same Manor Farm compost that I usually use. It's a peat-free compost sold locally to me, made in Glastonbury or Strait, and it's a lovely texture. So I'm not going to be sieving this today because we don't need it to be finer with the plug plants like we do with the seeds. So we just want to fill a pot up, and these are around sort of 3.5 by 2.5 inches roughly. And then I'm just grabbing a dibber. We're going to go quite deep to take away some of the legginess of these. And then all I'm going to do is push from the bottom of these and then lift from there. And then we're going to pop them down to the seed leaves. And then I'm just labelling with a chalk pen, which I finally got a new one of. Any that have got 2 in, we can either separate these and keep one of the seedlings, or we can just chop off the seedling. I would normally keep this one because that's a bit of a thicker stem and it looks healthier, but actually it's got some flea beetle damage on the new growth, so I'm going to leave this one instead, which looks a little bit stronger on the new growth. If there are any that you'd want to keep more than one of the seedlings that have managed to grow, then using the stems, we're just going to very gently pull them apart, and the roots should easily divide without having to really pull any apart. And then we're just going to continue to pot them up just as we have before. This last plug here, there's 3 seedlings that have come up. This one's got some damage on the largest one for some flea beetles by the look of it. And then these 2 don't look very strong either, so I'm just going to put those straight into the compost. It's not worth potting on weaker seedlings at this time of the year because they don't have the ability to catch up like they might do in the spring. We are now at the end of September and it is really becoming too late now in order to continue sowing these. But if you have got some that you want to get in and risk, then I definitely would say give it a go, especially if you're down south. We're in the Midlands here. I've been given a packet of these called Cauliflower Snowball. So I am going to sow an additional tray today and just see whether or not we can get those ones going. If they're too weak when it comes to the time to plant all the rest out, then they'll just go in the compost. But for me, it is worth putting these in the tray and just seeing how they do. I'm sowing 2 seeds into each of these cells, and then they will go in the house and they'll be watered from the bottom as well. As soon as they have germinated and they're about 0.5 centimetre up, they will go outside under the same mesh that the rest of these are going to go into to continue growing until they're ready then to be potted on exactly the same as these. Each year, as the weather changes, it is also becoming less and less obvious of when seeds are going to be growing well, so when to actually start each seed. So it is worth, in my opinion, to start a few at different times, some a little bit earlier and some a little bit later, and then just keep a diary of actually which ones are doing the best. It's also the same with varieties. If you found that you can't grow certain, especially brassicas, but any seedlings, if you've got certain varieties that never grow very well in your garden, it's always worth trying some different varieties because they might just be more suited to your garden than the ones that you're currently using. I'm just going to pop a label on these ones, and then I'm going to put just the end of September just so I know when these ones were sown, as it is that little bit too late really for them. And then I'm just going to water these from the bottom. I do a little bit of both from the bottom and the top, but I do really prefer to do it from the bottom. Just depends on how lazy I'm being really. When you do it from the top, you've got more chance of it dislodging some of the seeds that we put in, or also on these it could end up that we overwater them and then we could have issues with damping off, which is where they just suddenly all die and rot. So we don't want that to happen, obviously. So that's actually been soaking now for about 20 minutes while I went and picked my raspberries and blackberries. And you can see now that the top is nice and moist, so that's soaked it up quite well. And with these ones, they've got a decent weight to them. So they are ready now to go around the side. One thing I will also point out is that our brassicas don't like too much heat. So make sure that we don't have them in a closed little polytunnel or house, or at least if it is, it's in one that is opened during the day. But they don't even need to have a closed door during the night either. They will prefer the cooler temperatures after they've germinated. It is important, if you are germinating them in the house, to make sure that you remove them as soon as they are up and bring them outside, especially if you've got central heating. We don't have any central heating in our house, and that will be plenty of residual heat in order just to get these germinated. When you come to water them next, just check the weight, and if they have enough weight on them, the same as they do right now, then they won't need watering. If they don't, then just give them a little bit. It's always better to underwater them than overwater them, because we can add more but we can't take it away. And then we'll be looking at repotting these ones next, once they have filled out their roots in the pot as well. So they've just gone next to the kale now in this little old flexi greenhouse that stays outside. They do go on a tray, and then I can water them from the bottom. And then the only other thing I need to keep an eye on is make sure that there's no slugs that get in, or snails, because they can do damage very quickly. So do keep an eye out for those. And then they live behind just a cover, which is just one of the very fine meshes that you can buy to keep out the flea beetles and the butterflies.